undergraduates, and congratulations! I love commencement, and I work it as often as I possibly can, but I have something to confess to you. When I graduated with my doctoral degree in the fall of 2009, I did not want to walk because I was so bored at my undergraduate ceremony. Not at UF, obviously. But my mentor was graduating 2 other students at the time, and they were flying in from across country. And she said to me, if they're graduating and walking, so are you. I was glad that I did. On that day, as I was approaching the platform, I looked up over here to see my husband holding our son. He was about 18 months old at the time. He was waving, and his pacifier was hanging from his shirt off of one of those little clips like an alligator. It was really cute. And it was a very slow motion type of moment that marked something really special. So I was really glad she made me walk that day. Graduates, I hope you are equally glad to be here with us. And I hope you are feeling as much pride and joy and relief as I did. I am one of those freaks of nature that really likes working out. I started teaching fitness classes when I was 18 in my freshman year. And all through undergrad, I taught anywhere between 10 and 12 classes a week. 20 plus years later, I'm still teaching fitness, and I still love it. I also started teaching anatomy as an undergraduate. In my sophomore year, I had the opportunity to apply to be on a cadaver dissection team. That was an add-on credit to an already intimidating 8-credit-hour human anatomy and physiology class that I was taking. Getting onto the dissection team was a competitive process. I didn't think that I would make it. And as a kinesiology student and not a pre-med student, I was shocked that I actually made that team. 20 plus years later, I'm still teaching anatomy, and I still absolutely love it. There's something that working out and anatomy have in common. They're hard. But as it turns out, so am I. Ask any one of my fitness participants, ask any one of my current or former students, heck, ask my kids. I'm the hard one. I am hard. I set the bar high. I know there is value in struggle. As an exercise physiologist myself, I have studied and taught and personally experienced the value and the benefit of trying and failing, and trying and failing, and trying and failing some more. And as freshly graduated doctoral students, I know you know something about that too. But I've learned over the years that if you plan to have high expectations and you're asking folks to do something that they really probably don't want to do, like burpees or dissecting a fetal pig at their dining room table, you cannot be just the hard one. Whether you're moving on to teach and do research at a university, or headed for a job in industry, or plan a career at a nonprofit or an NGO, you will work as part of a team. And you're a Gator, so you will be a leader. Setting the bar high for yourself and your team is the best possible path to great innovation and success. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 lessons that I've learned that have helped me be a good leader in and out of the classroom. If you're going to be the hard one, graduates, let me also encourage you to be the flexible one. In fitness classes, we want our participants to have a good workout, obviously. But when someone comes to my class I have little to no idea who they are, where they're from, what their physical or mental state is that day or in general. The same goes for my students here at UF. And even though I pride myself in being the hard one, and I know that I need to push them, I don't want to push them to their breaking point. My goal instead is to offer a range of options and simply encourage them to be brave. But I can't make somebody be brave. If they choose to stay in their comfort zone, if they choose to not be brave that day, if they don't accept the push, that is an acceptable option. It is always an available option. I have to be flexible. When I was little, I loved swings, but I did not like people pushing me on the swings. They would often push way too hard, I would go way too high, and I would feel a loss of control and I would get very scared. I have a very strong memory of when I was about 5. I was at the park with my babysitter, and she was pushing my little brother on the swings, and he was going real high and loving it. She asked if I would also like a push. I vehemently said no, and she must have noticed the look of concern on my face, thinking that maybe she was pushing my brother too high. I definitely was concerned. So I declined the push, even though she said, I can push you more gently. I don't have to push you that high. Declined the push. And I was really grateful to her because she did not make me feel pressured to take the push at all. She didn't make me feel pressured to go high or do something I didn't want to do. And by her giving me that choice, she gave me the power, and that made me feel empowered. Have high expectations, but be flexible. Give people the opportunity to soar on their own. Let me also encourage you to be the relatable one. I tell a lot of stories in my classes, not fabricated stories, stories about me, about my family, about my friends, about my life. Let me assure you, I was born into the right body and into the right family to teach what I teach. So many diseases, disorders, damage, differences from cranium to calcaneus. One of the stories that students enjoy the most is about my mom and me when I was about 8 years old. We were walking into a building that had just laid new carpeting, and my mom has very severe asthma. So the carpet glue triggered an intense asthma attack. We immediately left the building, and out on the grassy lawn at this building, she started dumping out her big 1980s purse full of stuff in search of her EpiPen. She finally found the EpiPen, and as soon as she had it in her hands, she took the lid off and she handed it to me. 8-year-old me, terrified for my life, me, frozen, stiff, me. She quickly realized that I was not gonna really be much help to her, so she snatched the pen out and she gave the epinephrine injection to herself. I tell this story in my classes when covering the effects of epinephrine on the beta receptors found in respiratory smooth muscle cells. And it would be faster and easier for me to just explain where these receptors are and what happens when epinephrine binds to them. But I tell the story because it helps students relate to the material, and more importantly sometimes, it helps the students relate to me. That has probably never happened to most of my students, maybe not any of my students, but they can all relate to how I was feeling. This is also why the best fitness instructors do the workout with their participants. If you've never taken a Peloton class, you've probably at least seen the advertisements on TV. The instructor is always on the bike. When people see you enduring the same discomfort that they are, they know that you can relate to their pain. Have high expectations. be relatable. Be vulnerable enough and humble enough to share in the experience. Hashtag relatable. And finally, you can have tremendous impact by being the transparent one. Being transparent means knowing the why of what you are asking of others and being able to articulate that. My anatomy exams are heavily applied. I ask students to learn a huge volume of information in detail, from microscopic to gross. And then I ask them to use that information to solve problems, to figure out disease symptoms, mechanisms of injury, even comorbidities. This makes students highly uncomfortable because they have to really think and not just remember. And on day one of class, I tell my students that the exams will be this way. And I tell them why. I don't do this to scare them. I do this so that they will know that I have considered the consequences of making my exams that hard and that it's worth it. In order to share the why of what you are asking of others, you also have to know that why. So it is a worthy endeavor to regularly ask yourself this question: why am I doing this? You might be surprised how much simpler things can get, and maybe even you can take some things off your plate when you ask yourself that simple but important question. Have high expectations, but be transparent. Be clear about your why. When you are flexible and relatable and transparent, you build trust. And when someone trusts you, they will work hard for you and with you. And then a magical thing happens. You no longer have to be the hard one, because the trust in you transforms into a trust in themselves. They will start pushing themselves to work harder, to learn more, to lift heavier, to run longer. Graduates, I'd like to leave you with an example of what it looks like when you carefully and thoughtfully foster that kind of trust. This resulted in a very poignant moment for one of my students, and frankly, for me. She was kind enough and vulnerable enough to share the following brief reflection with me, and has given me permission to share it with you today. She wrote this: I was very apprehensive about dissecting a sheep brain. It was hard enough for me to just read chapter 13 on the brain. It stirred an immense amount of anxiety. I very briefly mentioned in my introduction to the course that my son was diagnosed with a brainstem glioma. He was diagnosed Christmas Day of 2002 at the age of 7. Ultimately, he succumbed to his disease 4 days after my birthday in 2004. Despite my many efforts, I still often wondered, had enough been done? Was surgery really not an option? Though this dissection has not been a panacea to all my questions, it has given me closure I so desperately needed. When I opened up the sheep brain and I got to the brainstem, I knew everything humanly possible had been done to save my precious son. I finally understood why surgery wasn't an option. I wanted to share this with you and let you know that I learned so much from this dissection. It gave me closure in areas you'll never truly understand. I will always keep that note from that student because it reminds me why I am the hard one. By being flexible and relatable and transparent and building trust and seeing my students start to trust themselves, they learn and they grow. And sometimes, as with my student, who made peace with herself about her son's death, they can face off with deep personal trauma. And that is why I will continue to be the hard one. Graduates, whatever you do next, whatever career you find yourselves in tomorrow or in 20 years, I encourage you to go out and be the hard one, but also the flexible one, and the relatable one, and the transparent one. Because the trust you build will matter. It may not matter in the way you planned, but believe me, it has the potential to change lives, including yours. Thank you. And again, my deepest congratulations.